Hello, I'm Kothorix, and today I'm going to be talking about Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs. If you've watched my last video, you know that this game's predecessor, Amnesia: The Dark Descent, is one of my favorite horror games, and I jumped into A Machine for Pigs hoping I'd have a similar experience. I usually try not to compare games to others and instead judge them by their own merit, but I can't much help it for A Machine for Pigs with the original still so fresh in my mind. The developers knew they had a formula that worked with The Dark Descent, and for some reason they decided to stray from it. I just don't have a lot of good to say about the game, especially when compared to the first Amnesia. A lot of the atmosphere is still there, and there is a fair amount of immersion by the sort of point-and-click style of interaction with the world. Just like the original, the game uses that atmosphere for its scares instead of jump scares. There are only a few jump scares in the game. It may be a small point, but I really like the map for the game. I always find these sorts of Da Vinci-esque drawings really interesting. At the risk of minor spoilers, I'll say that I was happy to see that there was more than one monster in the game. Knowing that I might see some new kind of horror kept me hopeful throughout the game. However, for me, the game fails on one very essential level. I just don't find it frightening. I think it has to do with the level of immersion. A Machine for Pigs fails to grab me like The Dark Descent did. You no longer hear your character's constant breathing, and there isn't a lot of that sort of screen blur and stretching that sometimes happens. The monsters appearing didn't unnerve me either. They just aren't frightening. Even when I initially saw the monster, it didn't startle me or make me feel like I didn't want to run into it. Part of the reason was just because of its small size and more animal-like movement. Another major problem with the monster appearances is that your lantern and lights in the area will begin to flicker when it's around. At no point are you surprised to see the monster, you always know when it's coming. I'm not saying that I'd prefer jump scares, but I think it would have been much more effective to have the monster appear at times with no warning. It would put the player much more on edge. Another main complaint about the monsters is that it's shown all too often. You'll run into it constantly, and after the third or fourth time you see it, I promise you won't be afraid of it, if you were afraid of it to begin with. Instead of using monsters as a looming impending threat, the developers decided to throw them in more as an obstacle that you'll need to avoid. I didn't think I'd ever say this, but I kind of miss my character being afraid of the dark. Nothing really bad happens to you for being in the dark, and your lantern doesn't need fuel this time, meaning you can always have it on. There isn't any kind of inventory system either. Altogether, the game feels much more simplified, and it was already a simple game to begin with. Even the puzzles feel more simplified. Most of them just involve flipping a switch, and then moving to the other side of the room and flipping another switch. And you'll be wandering around a lot. In fact, I think I spent about an hour combined just trying to see if I could interact with anything in whatever room I was in, trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing. The game isn't without bugs either. A few times I encountered minor errors, like getting stuck on a ladder or wonky item physics, but one time in particular I completely fell through the world. Altogether, the game feels much less polished and an obvious amount less deep. Also, fair warning, if you're the kind of person who allows the ending of a game or movie to ruin the experience for you, I wouldn't recommend playing through the game. The ending is confusing, or at least it was for me. I also felt it was fairly pretentious and arty in just the way the dialogue was written.
Soon I will spill that blue water and split the egg, the atom, my soul, and there will be a very great burning that we might make the world clean.
Despite all of that, Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs isn't a terrible game. I was still interested enough by the story and dark themes to play through it to the end. However, with the game coming in at only a 5-hour playtime, I can't recommend spending the $20 Steam price. Wait for a sale on this one, or maybe pick it up as a bundle with the original game, which I definitely recommend playing. And that being said, I have a question for you all. How long do you think a $20 game should be? Or does it really just depend on how good it is? Anyway, that's all for now. I'm Kothorix, and thanks for watching.